It is another beautiful day here at the OP, and I've got a lot of prep to do before I trek halfway across the country from Texas to join my friends in Oregon for this year's Power Stop Trail. Now for this episode, I am going full adult and installing a real roof rack. One that can hold 2 tents, a chainsaw, a whole bunch of other gear, and I guess whatever else I think needs a little bit of sunshine. And unlike so many other things on this truck, I don't have to make it. And I am glad, because this is the biggest danged old roof rack I have ever seen.
Hey y'all. It's time to upgrade the roof rack on the Suburban. So I had originally built, years ago, my own roof rack, and it's on the truck right now. But that's when David built things way too heavy and he was just kind of learning how to fabricate. So that has served its purpose and it needs to now come off. Now, watch the paint. Everything on here happened last time I was here. And I decided this a while back where I was thinking, I'm gonna build a new roof rack and I'm gonna make it lighter and more, purpose-built and all that. And honestly, I was kind of inspired by some of the other aluminum press-broke roof racks that I'd seen on some other trucks that I'd gone wheeling with. I started playing around with those ideas when a guy named Peter from Baseline Overland reached out and said, David, you don't have to build this on your own. The marketplace has solved that problem and I make one of these. Peter runs a business called Baseline Overland, and they make a really nice roof rack system built entirely from what I'll just briefly summarize as laser cut, press broke, powder coated, and anodized aluminum. So it hits all three of those secret sauce of the Venn diagram, which is it's relatively lightweight, it's very, very strong, as long as what you're attaching it to is good and sturdy. And I think this is also gonna be a pretty great value when it can carry all the gear that I want to carry for the type of off-roading and camping that I want to do. One thing that I'll just say, I'm not really into unboxing videos, but we shot a little bit of detail here because I wanted you to see the amount of care that Peter and his team put into packaging this. It's the very first impression that you get from them as to the care that they take in conveying to you all this stuff that you spent your hard-earned dollars on, and they take pride in that level of work. And really, it's now time for me to stop talking and start putting this together and getting it all on the truck.
Assembly is intuitive and the instructions are pretty good. But it is a real treat to just use hand tools and to not have to design and build something from scratch.
I've been working like a dog, day and night, trying to finish up this job and do it right.
I have seen folks build these on sawhorses, and it's probably actually a little smarter, but we built out the basic shape on the floor before doing a first test fit on the truck.
Singing, hey honey, I'm coming home, don't know why you're gone so long.
And look, while the rack itself isn't really that heavy, man, it is 10 feet long. So, as I have said many times, take your time and work with a friend if you can.
The front one's in, that's kind of squared. This is a little bit lined up. We still have to make this fine-tuned.
The Baseline roof rack doesn't use any of the factory mounting. So I'm setting the general position of the rack ahead of where I need to mark and drill mounting holes.
So we're pretty sure that we've got figured out exactly how this is going to mount and where we're going to place some of these mounts on the back here. But as you may notice, the truck has a bit of leprosy to it. So I'm actually going to take this over to my shop and be able to sand down and come back with some paint that's going to seal the rust and then just give us a good coat to work from, rather than the kind of rough surface that we've got there right now.
Now, don't mistake this for patina. It is just rust, and it needs to go away. So I sand through the crust until there's a good key on the primer and there's no raised edges on the flaking paint. I had this truck repainted the summer after I graduated high school. Now, for those of you that have a head for numbers, that makes this coat of paint older than the original one. It's held up okay for a cheap reshoot, but it's almost time for a refresh. So until then, I don't want it to rot, so I'm taking advantage of this moment to shoot some Seymour rust converter in the worst patches and following up with their high solids primer just for a little bit of extra protection. That'll keep it safe for another year or maybe 2 until I'm ready to take it to my buddy's, pro paint shop for a full reshoot. This process is simple, but don't think of it as the according to Hoyle way to paint your truck. Again, I'm just looking to preserve it until I can, fully reset it back to original.
Hey, honey, I'm coming home. I don't know why I've been gone so long. Hey, honey, I'm coming home to you. Hey, honey, now promise me that you're gonna be the light on for me. Hey, honey, I'm coming home soon.
Okay, so we've got all the, cross stays, or rather all but one of the cross stays in here, and that's for a very simple purpose. It does make it pretty much the full weight. Another little piece of detail, each one of these bows is justified all the way to one side of the slot or the other, so that again, I know that this thing is not in a diamond, that it's all perfectly square side to side. And we're gonna put this thing up on the truck next, and just see what we can do to get those mounts on the opposite sides lined out and marked for drilling on the nutserts on the roof. This rack covers the full acre of roof on my Suburban. And you can kind of see in these shots, but there are plenty of bodyline features to reference as we center and square the rack to the roof itself.
That's pretty darn close. Yeah, I mean, you just gotta make a couple of measurements and center it. It's a little cattywampus here. But
yeah, it's a little crooked.
Yeah, hang on.
And pull that end over.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Close-ish.
Now recall I mentioned that we'll need to drill all new mounts, and in this case, that is holes in the roof for nutserts. I'm using a paint pen to mark the pad mount outlines and also the center of the slots. If there was enough room, I'd use a transfer punch, but the automatic center punch gets this done very precisely. Now I used a regular drill bit, but would more quickly recommend a pilot hole followed by a unibit. I just didn't have that with me up at the shop.
I had this vision, I'm just gonna poke it through the headline.
It usually creates the flattest possible hole in sheet metal, but just make sure that you hit the right step or the nutsert won't cinch down correctly. Nutserts are a simple and effective way to put threads in a blind sheet metal hole. It's impossible to see exactly how these things work from this angle and on the truck, so we did a little test coupon for y'all.
It's a lot easier when the nutsert's in the truck.
The tool is easy enough to operate, but you can really see how the nutsert needs a snug fit, but not too snug in the hole so that when it mushrooms, it forms a tight fit in that blind hole. In this case, one full pull and then maybe a quarter pull for tightening is all that's required. Too little pull and the nutsert will spin, but too much and it'll just deform and might not work right. Back on the truck, I thread the mounts to finger tight. Now I won't go through every single drilled mount on the truck, but the forward pair, well, they do merit some commentary. The roof structure is really very compact there, and the nutsert and tooling needs additional clearance internally.
I'm always terrified that I'm gonna drill through to the headliner, so this is where I say, like I say all the time, go slow, right? Every time. Every time. One of the things that makes these trucks kind of so tough and long lasting is the roof is double layered. It's hard to see, and I know this is like video, but there's a second layer of roof in there and it overlaps almost all the way over to here. So even if you do punch through in a way that personally freaks me out, you're probably just gonna bang on the inner part of the double roof skin. There's enough steel on this roof that when layered together, I think it's 16, it's really, really stinking thick, like an 1/8 inch thick in some places, especially the back where they intended you to be able to carry a load.
Like when you drill through the top, you actually end up hitting like this little plate underneath. And look, it's not a big deal. You just persuade the inner structure out of the way with a hammer.
Ow! Yeah.
That will happen.
Oh, outstanding. Yeah, so the secondary piece of the under part of the roof structure, is much closer to this front hole than it is here on the back. This one should pop right in. That one, these forward ones, where the roof is thinnest, I need some hacking and persuasion, but I know how to do that. And yeah, the back one did go in pretty easily, and so we'll just be able to tighten this one up as normal. It is all tight up here on that forward, but not too bad.
In all, the rack sits on 16 of these threaded mounts, and they are well placed at the far edges of the roof. Certainly that gives you the most rack area, but it also places all the load-bearing supports over the most significant parts of the body's pillar structure, so you can actually carry a useful load. And later, my dad stopped by to lend a hand and to see the payoff of the project.
So they should just slip right in. That is the
I think that's gonna work. I think it's gonna take a minute to grow on me for the whole length, but that's just because I'm coming from having like a really short roof rack to begin with. This obviously makes full use of the roof, and that's really the part that I'm most excited about. Like the tent's gonna go on the back, you know, our Gazelle ground tent, but maybe some more gear back there. And honestly, I think I wanna put like right by my door, I think I wanna put the chainsaw, because that is the tool that I got into the most of on the last trip. But I'm skipping way too far ahead. In terms of like how this thing goes together, if you have like a 5-point scale on how this whole thing assembles, first of all, be right with yourself. You're dealing with a nearly 40-year-old platform, and so they don't make anything for this. And it's pretty cool that Baseline even has a kit that fits this type of truck. So I would say make sure, put this at a 3+ out of 5, because you need to be really adept at measuring and squaring, and you got to take something that, quite frankly, you're gonna assemble on the floor, make square to itself, and then put it on the truck and make it square. So you need to make sure that you've got all the good measuring and that you're just comfortable taking your time to get things, I'm gonna say it again, square on the truck. Nothing worse than having something that's all in a diamond or wamper jawed. I'm so glad that Peter stopped me in my tracks and said, David, I have figured this out. You do not have to make it yourself. Just put together my stuff and it'll be everything that you need for the next trip. You may have just come to this video and this may be the first time that you've seen the Suburban, but this is my very first car. In fact, my dad's here and helped out with the finishing of the video. And if you want to see all of that history, there's a playlist right here at the end that you can go to and learn 100% of the entire truck's history and all the modifications that I've done along the way. But we're gonna keep working on this thing and getting it ready for the next trip, and you'll see all that here. So until then, y'all take care.